go ahead and call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and I will read the remote script. Good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. And all town facilities are currently open with restricted hours and otherwise by appointment. Any votes that we take on at this meeting will be taken by roll call. And with that, I have to go back and let people in. They're just banging down the door. Okay. So tonight, on tonight's agenda, I guess first I'll start with, do we have any public comment from anybody on the committee? Hearing none. Do we have any public comment from anybody in the public? None. Okay, then the first item on the agenda after that was discussion around Finance Committee procedures. Again, I left that on from last week because everybody wasn't here. And also, I think this would probably also be a good place to bring up the question, Chris, that you raised regarding the whether or not we could have a public hearing at some point, or whether the public hearing, even though all of the information wasn't available, counted as a public hearing for the sake of being able to make a recommendation to town meeting. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think a public hearing should have all the pertinent information, and you know, the subject of that article was twofold. One, to extend the charge of the TC Passios committee to include looking at, you know, a new building. But then the second part is to amend the, you know, the amount of money allocated to it. So, you know, that information wasn't available up until now. So we have not had a chance to really discuss it. And certainly the public hasn't had a chance to look at it. So unless they've caught this meeting or last night's select board meeting, I don't know, it's kind of like on the floor is not the way to really have transparent government.
What would you propose as an alternative?
That moneyed articles need to come in time to hold a public hearing.
I think
the charter. I mean, that's what's in the charter.
Right. And I think one of the other potentials, I mean, there's a couple of things that can be looked at down the road as you guys, you know, like go through what you'd like to see as procedures. But one of the other things that we discussed was the potential for, when the public hearing date is set, any meetings that occur on the part of the Finance Committee between the public hearing and the town meeting would be pre-posted as public hearings. And then as we're aware of any articles that need to be brought up, they can be added on to the agenda so that people know what's going to be discussed, and that the format is a public hearing for warrant articles under discussion. Because the problem that we run into is if we don't get the information until late, there's no notice time. So that's one concern. I think the other, from my own perspective, is I think this is just what happens when you have a town run by a bunch of volunteer committees.
Well, not only, I mean, Terry, I subscribe to your idea. I think that there's nothing wrong with posting meetings for a month as public hearings, and we apply the tenets of a public hearing as necessary over the course of that month. I think to pre-populate all of the moneyed articles by the end of March is impractical. We live in the state of Massachusetts. We're living under open meeting law and all of the laws that are prescribed, as well as the charter. But the reality is that our charter says we meet on the first Saturday of May. We still don't know on the first Saturday of May what all the revenue numbers really are, but it's a best guess. And those guesses come into play over a period of time, as we've all just experienced. And I don't think it's all that practical to front load all this stuff before the end of March.
So that's not the situation that's in play here. This is a number that I don't even think the TC Passio's Building Design Committee has officially heard this number. The select board heard it last night. We only got the RFI to the town a week ago, and we received it 2 days ago.
Yeah, but I mean, Chris, stuff happens, right? I mean, the
But that's not
business of
transparent government, Peter.
Last night,
Last night,
the school committee heard revised numbers around a fire alarm system that they've been working on for months and months and months. They just heard it last night. I mean, if we can't live in a world of stuff that happens and information that comes in and make do with that information as best we can, we ought to just stop doing it.
I think we should stop doing it then. There's no reason this article can't wait until the fall. And the RFI that we received is inadequate. And the thought process behind just charging forward with the momentum we have as we're sliding down an icy hill is silly. You need to take time to think about how much this project should cost. That RFI should have been vetted by the TC Passio's Building Design Committee. It should have been vetted by us. It should have been vetted by the Board of Selectmen. There should be adequate time leading into tomorrow's or Saturday's meeting for the public to even have an idea of what's on it. So Joe average public doesn't know that there's a $54,000 ask for I don't even know what it is. A building that no one wants. Because everyone that heard my comment, not everyone, but I've had several people comment to me after my comment at Select Board saying, thank you. This is absolutely accurate. There's got to be transparency in this process.
I'm all for transparency. I think transparency can come as it comes. And I think that there is time. And I think that anybody who's been paying attention understands the issues. And you can bring in the price and account for the price as that price tag, as that information is made available. You're the same guy, Chris, who sitting here 6 or 8 months ago wanted to elongate this process and bring in every community group that wanted a piece of that project.
Absolutely.
And put us in the position that we're in now.
No, we didn't. I didn't put you in the position. I didn't put you in the position at all.
Sure you did. You
No, I
absolutely
didn't. They could have
Okay,
had this
wait.
number 3 months ago.
Actually, what put us in this position was the fact that all of a sudden we needed to have steel beams. I think that was what put us in this position. And I think that's what caused the number to inflate to such a ridiculous amount. But I understand your points. And I will say that basically, as painful as it is, the way that we handled this particular article at the public hearing was to say that we were going to defer to town meeting until we had more information, anticipating we were going to hear it at town meeting. It would be definitely better, and it would definitely be my preference to be able to take something like this and say, you know what, okay, why don't we put it off till the fall, except for the fact that if by the fall, we won't have any more information than we have right now. But I do understand that it feels particularly rushed. And I get that, but I also think that at this point, that would be why the way that the vote to recommend goes is, we can make we can vote yes, we can vote no, we can vote abstain, we can handle it however we like to. But at this particular point, I don't think that we're going to make any decisions around it tonight, and that's not my intention. Since we did defer to town meeting, my preference is to wait to town meeting. Evan, you have your hand up.
Just a quick question. I know we have a time frame where we have a drop dead date for when we're supposed to have warrants submitted to make it to town meeting. Is there any language in that also says that the warrant has to be complete, as in it can't go in with X's that will be filled in later? Or is it just sort of the warrant has to be in, but it can be altered at town meeting? And that seems a little strange.
It's at the discretion of
Send
the
them out.
town moderator as to whether it can be altered.
Right. Yeah, the town moderator makes the call on the floor.
It's the town moderator's meeting. It's a
Okay.
legislative meeting. It's not an executive meeting. And
The
town
articles do
moderator-
need to be substantially in line with what is actually moved on the floor. It can't be something that's completely different.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it can't just be an open-ended placeholder where you're going to say, oh, by the way, we're going to drop this on you at town meeting, but it can go in as, we know we're going to have a number at town meeting, but we don't know what that number is going to be until worst case scenario, 2 days before town meeting. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes that does happen, yes. And I think it's happened for a long time. And I think that, but one of the concerns that a lot of people have is that there's a lot of stuff around the periphery that you just can't see. So if we're not taking everything as a whole, and that's one of the complaints, and that's one of the reasons why the buildings haven't had any progress for decades, is that it becomes a moving target because you think you have a plan here and then that disappears. And then you think you have a plan here and that blows up. And so we're still sitting here looking at buildings that will either need to be rehabbed or torn down.
Is this a capital item?
It's an interesting question. And I think because is the article brought by the committee or is the article brought by the town?
I don't know. We went over the definition of what a capital item was last week, and it seems as though this would fall within it.
The article is brought by the Board of Selectmen.
Which is another interesting question, yeah.
Not what the warrant says.
And a project can be what is defined as a capital project, but not be within the capital plan. It can have a separate article.
Article 25 is submitted by the TC Passios Building Design Committee.
And endorsed by the Board of Selectmen.
I'm just reading what's in the warrant.
Okay. Any other discussion around procedural type because I do think this should be something that you guys do try to work out going forward. But the other piece that I do want to thank Heather for, and I don't know who put the information together, but I do think it's really a good idea. The DPW information coming from with all the comparisons, I found helpful.
Yeah, I think we should put together a document that has some procedural some procedural items in it. And we should probably collect them. Each of us can nominate an item or two or whatever we want that we think is pertinent and bring them together in a future meeting, obviously after town meeting, and discuss them and perhaps vote on those items in particular. I mean, the practice that we've been, attempting to follow this year around having documentation in place up to a couple of days or a couple of days prior to our meetings that Chris proposed, I think is something that, we've adhered to fairly well. And I think it's been good, and we should put it in writing. And if a member objects to discussing something because we don't have the information, then we should have the ability to kick that can to the next meeting. But right now it's a little bit ambiguous. So I do think that we do eventually need to have some kind of written document.
We'll kick this down to May. I'd say July, but I know that you guys are going to want me to participate. All right, warrant article recommendations. On this one, we have collective bargaining on there. That was because one of them came through. Is that what that is, Heather? Do you want to speak to that?
Yes. Would you like to start with the TCP article? I think Michael Ray is here on behalf of that article first, or?
Yes, we can let Michael Ray speak.
I'm here for the duration, so.
Yeah, well, I figured so. Yeah, you're not going anywhere fast.
All right. So thank you, Town Manager, for suggesting that, and for Madam Chair for agreeing to put TC Passos a little further up on the agenda tonight. So the TC Passios Design Committee, I heard a couple of comments already tonight about this. I don't know if I'll be able to address all of them, but the TC Passios Design Committee has been working for the last 2 years based on the charge of studying the land and the building and land known as the TC Passios to consolidate school, town, and community uses. So over the last 2 years, a lot of work has been done within the group. We've hired an architect, an engineering company as approved at town meeting 2 years ago. And that money has been used to do a lot of research. So we've done investigative work on the environment, on mechanical systems, on all the plumbing systems, electrical systems, all the stuff dealing with the building. It's been a lot of time, a lot of energy. The committee also met with, for about 2 months there, 2.5 months, we had public hearings in which we invited any member of the public to come forward and identify any space needs. During that time, the schools were at a lot of meetings, the Boys and Girls Club, many different organizations in town, Lions Club, different people spoke from the farming community about the need for a commercial kitchen. There were different groups that spoke to the need of having a space for visiting lecturers or any kind of seminars, or just to have a conference room that's available for the community to utilize. I'm sure we all can think of refinances in the last year. So all this work, all these meetings were had, and then the committee prioritized based on the school, town, and community uses how to best maximize the space in the building. And the intent of all this is to move forward and provide the town with that plan and an estimate for what it would cost to, again, consolidate those school, town, and community uses into the building and land known as the TC Passios. Now, when we got our cost estimate this year, one thing really shocked us, and that was the total. I think that we all went into the process with the assumption in the back of our minds that we're going to hear a number somewhere between $10 and $15 million. And when it came back at 21 million, we were all kind of shocked. And then, of course, it's, well, why are we so high? And what happens is TC Passios is a 69-year-old building. And, the building code at the time it was built is different than the building code now. And when you touch more than 50% of the building, as you will need to do for this remodel, you trigger what is known as a level 3. And a level 3 trigger means that you have to meet the current building code in the whole building. So that means that the entire plumbing, electrical systems have to all be replaced. That the roof is already at the end of its useful life, but the roof needs to be replaced. There's a new requirement to make the building earthquake proof. So a bunch of steel has to be, dug into the ground and mounted and supported. And so all these different things added together came to about $8 million. And what this means is if we want to use the building now in its current condition, we want to keep it going. We don't want to change anything that we're doing. We just want to have it there to figure out what more we can do with this in the future. Just to be able to do that will cost the town no less than $8 million. So no matter how, and that I think it was one of those, and again, that $8 million doesn't close back up those walls. You still have all that, everything's still exposed, but that's what it's going to cost to be able to keep that building in its current condition or position longer. So this rehab cost came back at 300 and roughly 30. So we worked with the engineering and architects to try to see what drivers, how we could bring this cost down. One of the things that we looked at was how they were phasing the construction. It was the $21 million assumed that the schools and PAC, which currently occupy the building, would remain in there throughout the construction process so that they would move around the building so that way they don't lose a home. And the committee said, let's evict them so that way we can do this faster and cheaper, so it can cost less. We looked at the materials. We said, what can we not change? So we stuck with a vinyl type flooring. We minimized any kind of, there are no gold toilets. The building's going to basically look the same. It's going to have new doors and new windows, but when you drive by it, it's going to, for the most part, look the same for $19 million. And so as we drove this cost down, we got to a number around 18 million, which came out to $334 per square foot. Now, Mr. Roy, our chair, is a engineer. I work in the property contracting business. Different members of the board also have different experiences with property and buildings. And we know that, and the architects also gave their feedback, that the cost for a new building would roughly be market rate, $275 a square foot. So we're at a point where none of us want to go to the town and say, why don't we spend $18 million to build this new building or rehab this building, make all these different uses. And by the way, the per square foot cost is at least $34 higher than the market rate and at most $50-something higher than the market rate per square foot. And we have 55,000 square feet. So the prudent thing for the board to look at is that cost of the rebuild. So that way, we've already identified all these space needs. There was an exhaustive process of the architects working with every single town office, every single department, every employee multiple times to figure out their current and future space needs. And the backdrop of all of this, keep in mind, is that Lunenburg is 293 years old and we've never built a town hall. So the one that we have was donated to us. So where we're at is, if we're going to do this, we have to assume that this building is going to be there for 200 at least more years. And to use a 69-year-old building, I think all of us are prepared to come to the town and say, here's what it will cost to rehab this, but we think it's necessary to also say, and here's how we can also do the same thing in a new building at what we believe will be a lower cost. So, although it has taken a long time to get this number back, we did agree as a committee to allow our chair to negotiate with the town manager and the architects on a number. So I know that negotiations have been going on for a while, and the architects understood, 8 weeks ago that we were 6 weeks ago, we were really trying to lock down this number. They understood the different timelines we were kind of under, but unfortunately the numbers came in when they did. So I recommend, based on where we're at in this process, and also Mr. Bernard made a note, the TC Passios Committee is an advisory committee to the select board. So the select board is required to put any article that's advised or recommended onto the warrant. So that's how it got there. But within its own right, we're just advisors. We're just advisory. So we recommend for the town to spend $54,000 to look into this possible cost, as we're under the assumption that it may save us a couple of millions of dollars.
Michael Ray, just you mentioned market rate. Is market rate prevailing wage?
Market rate is prevailing wage, but it's also just like comparative building. And for the most part, this is an office space type use. And so knowing what that typical office space per square footage is, that's kind of the number we're using.
Yeah, no,
I'm finished with my comments. So I'm open to your questions.
Peter.
Mr. Jeffries, is the intent here to give us a true apples to apples comparison of the cost based on the conclusions that the committee came to in terms of what should go into the TCP building during your original during let's call it phase one of the project, I guess. I guess what I'm wrestling with here is that I consider there's an argument to be made that town office space is like closet space in your house, right? You're gonna accumulate as much stuff as you can jam in your closets, and when you can't fit any more in your closets, you either need a new house or you got to throw some stuff away. And I have the impression that what we've decided to put into the TCP project is largely directed by the 55,000 square feet that are available. And some stuff made it and some stuff didn't. But when you go to build a purpose-built town hall, it might not require after-school activities for kids or the school department office space or a whole host of things that are included in this building. So if we're not to rehab TC Passios, would it make sense to build a town hall that isn't 55,000 square feet? So I guess that's an issue that I'm wrestling with, and I'm not quite sure what the path forward is. You know, is apples to apples a 55,000 square foot building that fits all the same stuff, or is apples to apples maybe two different buildings, one that does the town stuff and one that does the school stuff, or some other combination thereof?
Yeah, those are all, I understand your question, and I'll kind of give me a second here to walk through some of these answers. I think that we all came into the process expecting the north wing of the building to be torn down. I think that, looking at the square footage at Town Hall, looking at the square footage at Ritter Building, knowing what's already in use at the TC Passios, I think we all had a reasonable assumption that, the whole north wing was going to go bye-bye. And it was really during that process of reaching out to the community that we were made aware of all these additional needs that are out there. And so 55,000 square feet then became the limit of what we could do. The schools made a really passionate case, I thought, for why they wanted to be co-located with the town departments. So I think that we didn't challenge, we did ask them, could you use the Ritter building? Could that be a building that works for the superintendent's office? They explored that, they looked at the building, and they came back with a list of reasons for why that space would not be optimal for their needs, and why a different space would work. We considered that, and we accepted that that building was not, going to work for them. Now, one other thing is that the ACE program, which focuses on 18 through roughly 22-year-olds, 21, 22-year-olds who have additional needs after they graduate, that one of the coordinators for that program has to be co-located with that program. And it's an office space. So, so it made sense to then keep the ACE program in the building, and that's the evolution of that. The conference rooms and the space of PAC, the intent is for all those conference rooms and meeting rooms to be hardwired into PAC, so that, there are meetings that can be simultaneously recorded, cast, etc. The Boys and Girls Club came and made a lot of arguments and why they need more space. And ultimately, we agreed that their argument was compelling, but that the school's request was for a lot more square footage than we thought we even imagined. And I think there was pushback on that. Could you do this in a school? Why does the after school program need its own building? Why, could this happen in a library? Could this happen, at one of the existing schools? And the superintendent and the school department made an argument that no, that it's much better for the students to be in a certain type of environment, et cetera, et cetera. And so again, we accepted their space needs and their future space needs. We also understand how many parents how many children that space could hold, how many parents could be accommodated, and then again, thinking out future use for what that could be. I think that any kind of future design is going to be a multi-story building. With a multi-story building, you get certain efficiencies. All that wiring, you don't need as much of it. You're not going as far. All that plumbing, you're not going as far. All that electrical, you're not going as far. Also, this building was meant for kids. These hallways are huge. When you put adults in there, they need to be smaller. The locations of the bathrooms, the size of the bathrooms are dictated by the uses in the building, but I imagine that some of that square footage would probably change in shape. I imagine that we've pretty much modularized this design. And so we haven't talked about how we're going to proceed with doing something that's outside of our current charge, because it's outside of our current charge. But I expect that as we move, that we will take this kind of modular design, put it together, stack the building, and end up somewhere around 45,000 square feet. I think, my opinion on this, which, is my opinion. I don't think I try not to have it weigh into, my work with the committee, but my own opinion is that a town hall that meets the needs of multi-generations is the definition of a community building. It becomes a cornerstone of our town, that you have a building that meets the needs of everyone. Right now we don't have space that really touches that 18 through 55-year-old crowd. We don't have meeting space for them. We just don't. So even if this building were just to focus on town offices, I think that there's a lot of need out there that we can address. And again, I want to remind everyone that our town is 293 years old and we have never built a town hall. So, this is something that we have a long history of not addressing. And I think that as we move forward, that, this design should be able to address the known needs now, so that way we're better posited to meet the needs in the future.
Chris?
Yeah, so I first want to say, I watched most of the TC Passios building reuse meetings. I attended and made comments at some, and I think the committee did an excellent job, and the architects and the designers did an excellent job, given the requirements that evolved through this process, and the constraints being the building that is in place at the time. My biggest problem now, though, is that because of the price tag that came out of that, and kind of a realization that that's not the proper thing it's probably not the right thing to do, to try to renovate it to meet all these needs, is if I were to tear down that building and recognize that I have a Turkey Hill project, forthcoming within the next decade or so, that I don't know that consolidating town offices and community space, which I think should go together, with the school-oriented programs is the right thing to do. So I think what should happen is we do need to take the entire space of this town into consideration. The 5 major buildings, plus now I guess Turkey Hill, and what are we going to do with all this? And come up with a plan, put the budgets in place, design to a cost, not design just to wishes, and take a more holistic view of all this. And that's kind of what I feel is wrong with this process. I feel like the $54,000 is going to lead us to something that's not an answer that we're going to do anything with, especially where we know that, a ballpark estimate of any of this is $275 per square foot. And we know the costs associated with tearing down a building. And we know that there's been discussions within the Architectural Preservation District that perhaps what we want to do is retain the facade of the old primary school. There's just so many things that are out there kind of circulating around. The one thing that we did get with the money that we put into this, as Mr. Jeffries mentioned, is we got an excellent understanding of the needs of the town. That's very invaluable work. I just feel like the better thing to do is to wait. I guess we could approve the money and wait to pull the trigger on when we actually use the money. But I'd like to see that it's not done immediately, that a more holistic view of this with budgetary, recommendations from Finance Committee be taken into account as to the next steps. So the other thing that, I talked a little bit about during this meeting, these meetings, as well as on Tuesday, is infrastructure. We have bridges and culverts and all this other infrastructure around town that needs to be taken into consideration. So I just feel like my personal opinion and why I would vote no on this right now is that I think we need to pump the brakes, reassess, take a more holistic architectural view, tops down town-wide, versus just continuing on with the design a 50,000 square foot building in its current location.
If I can respond to your concerns. So, a couple of things. So the town has already had a building reuse committee for 4 years that spent 4 years looking into this big picture view of how to use all these buildings. These two parcels, the old primary and the TC Passios, were school property. Town meeting voted to transfer that property over to the town, and then the select board then pushed to have a building reuse committee look into how to use all these new buildings. For 4 years they worked, and all of their recommendations were denied at town meeting. So we're in the position that we are in, which is that the town doesn't have the appetite to do anything with these property or buildings right now, or so I think, unless it's town controlled. And with the charge that this committee was given, I think that we've already been given that task of looking into community uses. Again, we went into this process aware that of the square footage of current town hall, square footage of Ritter building, square footage of what was already being used, square footage of all this current office space. We went into this process with that awareness, and we were looking at the rest of the building for community uses. And I think the town has already decided that it wants to move in the direction of taking a 55,000 square foot building and figuring out what kind of community uses we can serve in that building. I mean, that's what was voted on. That's what passed. That's what was funded. That's what we did. And so with you bring up a couple other questions, based on my own training experience, I don't believe that there's any residual value to the old primary building. The facade of the building is shot. There are trees growing out of the basement. The building is falling down. So I don't. It's in my opinion, it's at least a decade past the point of salvaging. It's been sitting there for a very long time. I don't. Pointing, which is when you fix the brickwork on a building, that's a lot of money. I just did it at one of my properties down in Watertown. I mean, if you want to repoint that building, you're going to spend $1 million to repoint an old building. But again, you also, as a member of the MPO, which is a regional organization that looks into infrastructure funding, as an example, the project that's currently happening down near Mackey's is funded through MPO. That when we have, part of our role as selectmen is to have this awareness of these upcoming infrastructure needs. And as we sit on these regional boards, to advocate for funding. And so that way we get money, millions of dollars, that funnels into our town for infrastructure needs. So I think that we have a good record of being able to secure outside funding for infrastructure. We've talked to the schools about Turkey Hill, and quite honestly, they're like, we don't have a plan right now for Turkey Hill Elementary School. There's nothing in front of the table. There's nothing going on next year. We're not presenting anything about doing anything with Turkey Hill Middle School for at least the next 4 years. So, I mean, I'm hearing this, I hear you, but I think we also have to, we have real people who work in these roles. We pay them a lot of money, and I think we should trust their input.
So I agree with their input, and I agree with you that there's no reason to save the old primary school. I think it should be demolished, brought to ground. However, that does not negate the fact that the town also pass an architectural preservation district committee, and that building now falls into the historical, age, and they feel that needs to be preserved. It seems odd to me that one would say, let's tear down that building, tear down TC Passios, and the best thing to do is to build a mixed 50,000 square foot community municipal office / after school program. Like the after school program part of that makes no sense to me. And I understand when they say, okay, I don't know if I agree with it, but I understand when they say the after school program shouldn't be in individual teachers' classrooms because they have to prep it and, clean it and all this other stuff. Got it. But that's not to say that if we didn't build or renovate Turkey Hill, that wouldn't be a better spot to say, let's put a dedicated after school wing on with the, let's call it a third of the, 15,000 square foot wing on it for the after school program. So to me, I'm not going to go forward with a kind of a piecemeal approach as an individual voter, nor would I make a recommendation that, knowing that we have all these things that need to get dealt with. So that's just, I guess that's just my opinion, but it's an opinion that I hear when I talk to others around town as well. So I do feel that we voted on looking at reusing a building. The thought was that it would be in the $10 to $12 million range, as you stated. It's not that at all. So the momentum we gained with that is probably not to say that what we meant by that is that all of those uses should be at that location under one roof.
Do you think it's fair to say that when town meeting voted to appropriate funds to consolidate these uses, that town meeting was aware that they were looking to put all this together in 55,000 square feet? Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
I think it's fair to say that that's what happened. I think that I'm going back even prior to like with the Building Reuse Committee when it first met, and they were talking about doing renovations to the Passios to move the town offices over there and using the sale of other properties to try to pay for that. And at that point, all they wanted to do was move the town offices over there. And I think that the program grew not because that's what Town Hall, I think, was looking for. They were just looking for if there's going to be a renovation project and all of these things are available, well, let's take a look at it and see if it makes sense to do that. I think that there's the other thing that a lot of people liked about, the Passios as a site for town halls had to do with the accessibility of the building. And that wasn't necessarily for school age kids as much as it was for seniors. So I think that it's gone through so many iterations. It's really kind of hard to gauge what it is that the town wants. And I think that Saturday will be an interesting read on how people feel about it. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. Not guns in the woods. I'm not looking forward to that discussion, but I'm looking forward to the discussion on the Passios project. Peter, you have your hand up.
Yeah, as Chris and Michael Ray were talking, I got to tell you, despite my earlier comments, I actually agree with Chris more than I disagree with him. And
He hates saying that.
On this topic, I hate saying that. But on this topic, I do. I think I disagree with the path that we took to get to where we are. But here's the net. We're never going to achieve consensus on town buildings. I've been living in Lunenburg for nearly all of my life. We had town building reuse and town center study committees in the 80s that didn't achieve anything. And here we are 40 plus years later, and we're still doing the same thing. We need to make progress. And if Pete Beardmore were king for a day, we would not put a town hall on that stamp of land. We would put something that's educationally focused on that stamp of land and move the purpose of that space back to the school campus, and we would put town hall someplace else if I were king for a day. I'm not. And I've sat here for a very long time watching us make things more confusing and kick cans further and further and further down the road. And that was the source of my frustration back last summer and fall, when we seemingly elongated this process to incorporate more uses into this space. If this money can get us closer to a definitive decision on this thing that we can potentially make in November, then I'm for spending the money just to getting to a decision. And if the decision is not to renovate, then we move forward. If the decision is to renovate, then we move forward. But I just feel like if we don't do this, then we're going to make an incomplete decision that's going to cost us more years. And how does Turkey Hill relate to this? Well, it all comes down to borrowing capacity, and it all comes down to how much we can afford to have on our plate in the years that are ahead of us. And we do need to address Turkey Hill in the latter part of this decade and the beginning of the next. And if we don't have this thing solved, we're not going to be able to solve the Turkey Hill problem. So I feel like we got to stop delaying. We got to make decisions, for better or worse. We just got to move this process forward.
So Peter, I guess I don't understand your comment as to if this extra money would help us to understand whether to renovate. The additional money here is to understand what it would cost to tear down and build new.
Yeah, but I think what it gives us is an a true apples to apples comparison.
I think it also gives an opportunity for, depending on when this starts and how long this goes. I think basically then the group comes back to town meeting and says, we looked at rebuild and we looked at, we're trying to stay within like 12 to $15 million. And we've decided that we just want to really just go with town offices, and that's what we're going to present. Or they present that it's going to cost us, in order to do the 55,000 square foot footprint or the 45,000 square foot footprint, it's going to cost a ton of money. And the town at that point will vote to proceed or not. And I think that's a heck of a lot further than we've been for a long time, if indeed that's the direction it goes. But it also could be that people will, hear the discussion around the renovation. It's going to be an interesting discussion on Saturday, and I think I'm kind of looking forward to how that's going to go.
Terry, I don't think the cost estimate gets what you just said though, because I think it is simply the cost and the design for a 50,000 square foot
New building,
new
right.
building, not
Right.
A portion of the options associated with a 30,000 or a 50,000.
Right, but we also know that if it comes back at $20 million, chances are good that they're going to have to start carving it back.
Are we not fairly certain that the $275 per square foot plus the cost to demolish the building is the pretty sound financial figure we can use?
Well, what I said was 300 was the ceiling there, so $275 to $300 a square foot.
Yeah, and I had in my mind that it was like 250 to 300 based on, so.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jeffries, for your presentation. I'm assuming that nobody else has questions, since I don't see any other hands up.
Are we
Appreciate
not
your
looking to act on this tonight?
I'm not prepared. I would just as soon wait for the discussion on the floor. But that's me. If anybody does feel ready to take action on it, Heather Soroka?
I just have a question for Michael Ray. He said he had a figure of $8 million. Michael Ray, what was the $8 million for if we keep the building as is right now?
Yeah.
What-
Let me
just-
go.
that-
Sure. Let me just go ahead
Okay.
and pull that information up here.
Michael Ray, while you're pulling that, I thought I heard that the 500-page report was available somewhere, but I have not found it. Is it available?
I also looked at the town website and I did not see that so as well. So I'll reach out and see if we can get that I'll talk to Heather, the town manager, and see if we can get that posted as soon as possible.
It's seriously a 500-page report.
Yeah, it's 500 and plus pages,
It's
actually.
a very detailed design. I mean,
Extremely detailed.
Wow.
Let's see. I have to open up this document real quick. So yeah, that number that I mentioned earlier, let me just pull this up. And I'll give this to you each one. So the cost of a new roof is going to be $1,360,000. The cost of new doors and windows, $340,000. Hazmat remediation, $750,000. Structural steel, $320,000. HVAC, $2,920,000. Electrical, $2,125,000. And fire suppression, about $430,000. So in total, that comes to about 8 million.
So that's infrastructure of the building, so to speak.
Correct. That's without, again,
So
that's
no matter
just
what you
meeting-
do to it, if you paint it green or blue and, you know, you want to have a party and it doesn't matter what you're going to do with the building, you got to spend that money to use the building for whatever.
You got to spend that money to have open walls and door all on the inside. You no finishings there. So yes.
So just straight open concept. Okay. Any others before I let Mr. Jeffries go?
I have just one more question.
Go ahead, Evan.
So if we're looking at the rebuild, and if we are looking at the 55,000 square feet, just a quick little math, between $275 to $300 per square foot, that's $15 to $16.5 million. That doesn't include the tear down. That doesn't include, I mean, to me, that puts us kind of right back up to where we are. So if the town is already having a difficult time swallowing 18 million, as we think they will, how are you going to push? How are you anticipating pushing 15 million plus a tear down cost?
Yeah. So, Mr. Menard actually kind of answered that question a little earlier when he referenced a lower dollar amount. We are factoring in the tear down of the building when we say
That's at the 275 to 300.
300. Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If I can make a final comment, if there's no more questions. So one thing to also think about as we talk about other parcels of land, which is not something the TC Passos has said, but as a selectman, and I'll say it from that hat. The village district, the architectural preservation district, was designed to not just make everyone keep their homes looking old, but to have a vibrant town center where there can be multiple uses in buildings. It's really difficult to do that if you don't start finding ways to bring in some interests into the center of town to help improve that sense of vibrancy. One of the challenges with parking, the center district requires office space to have 300, one parking space for every 300 square feet. So if you assume that the building is going to be 45,000 square feet, based on the math, that comes out to 150 parking spaces, roughly. 150 parking spaces is about an acre of land. If you think about the square footage of a 20,000 square foot footprint for meeting rooms, office space, let's say you don't put any school uses in there, you just have a 20,000 square foot building. By the time you put in the parking lot, the building, you're going to need 2.5 acres just for that. I think nobody wants a town green that's a parking lot and a building. I don't think so, at least. We did a survey as selectmen to see what people wanted in that space. And what on that survey at a town meeting, we had options for a future town hall, reuse the current building, to reuse the current building as a town hall, to build a new town hall, senior housing, a parking lot with a parking lot with a small green, or a green space with a small parking lot. And the top two picks, as I recall, were the parking lot with the small green and the large green with the small parking lot. That's the survey results that came back from town meeting. So I think the select board is moving in that direction on that property. But again, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in this process for there to be additional input. I think it's really important as we move forward to continue to engage one another and go through a process. But I also want to, one thing I'd like to urge you to consider is that we're not meeting a lot of needs in our town. When are we going to meet them? When are we going to do something about the people who have a business, as farmers, they need to get a commercial kitchen for 8 hours a week. When are we going to address that? We have people who have opioids ravaging through their family. They need spaces to meet and grieve. When are we going to address that? A lot of people are divorced. They need a meeting space to meet up with their children, sometimes supervised. Where are we going to do that at? So, I think that we have to always think about kids. We have to always think about our seniors. We have to think about everybody too. And at what, again, 293 years, we haven't built a town hall. When are we going to do that? And when are we going to address the needs of our people? All of them. So thank you for your time today. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so Heather, I'm going to turn the rest of this this agenda item over to you.
Where would you like to start? Do you
I
want
don't
to?
know. Do you want something up? Yeah. Peter, do you have the changes in the budget, the budget adjustments?
Yep.
Perfect.
You got to give me screen sharing ability though.
Well, it says only one person at a time, but it doesn't say it can't be you. Try now.
All right. You good? See it?
Could you make it a little bigger, if possible?
I'm just going to go stand close to my TV. So.
All right. So last we left off under the revenue portion, we're up to the solid waste. That's I'm going to start from there. These are new figures below that. So use of free cash for the landscape design for the 30 School Street. That number is plugged in. That's $30,000 for that article. The TCP design services, the one we just discussed, $54,000. This week received notification that there were additional costs associated with a prior year invoice. That's an additional $500, which would be from free cash as well. That increases that article, which is Article 3, to $645 total. The next line is increased free cash amount towards capital. So this is due to the bid that's coming in for the trash and recycling program. The bid that we received was substantially more than the estimate and the surplus that was left in the budget unappropriated. So there'll be an additional need for $105,100, which you'll see on the bottom portion of the worksheet under expenditures. So my recommendation was to revise the funding sources for the capital plan, to increase the free cash by $65,216, which decrease the raise and appropriation amount, and use that towards the solid waste and recycling program costs.
Heather, are you gonna, and I apologize, this may have come up last week. I didn't watch the meeting. Are you gonna talk through what's going on with the trash contract?
As much as I can, because we haven't signed a contract or anything like that. So I can go through, the cost. Essentially, we've had a very good deal we had a 10-year contract, which is pretty much unheard of, number one. Two, the whole change in the recycling market that happened as a result of the national sword policy in China, and that happened in 2017. We kind of staved off any increase in recycling for over a year. And the recycling costs have substantially increased. That was the biggest portion of the increase was recycling processing was over 100% increase. So that's what's driving it is market changes. They're, talking to the vendor, they're having to dispose of their trash in Alabama. So it's a problem with the market.
Do you anticipate that we'll be able to offset some of these costs through bags or reorganizing the trash program at all?
So this portion, the operating budget would be, just the recycling portion. The trash collection and disposal will have to be offset by the increase in bag fees.
So this is sunk cost no matter what. This is not going to be affected by the bag fee increase.
Correct. It's completely separate. The trash disposal is an enterprise, so it's self-sufficient. The recycling, everyone can participate, so that's why it's in the operating budget.
How much is that going to go up?
That estimate is roughly between 30 and 40% increase.
I guess that's what happens when you sit on a 10-year contract. I think what I'd like to do, because, all right, so if the committee feels prepared to do this, I would like to take a vote on changing the 145 to 645 number, since that is a separate item. And that's also part of the consent calendar, I believe.
It is.
Okay, so I'd like to take that separately.
Which one, Terry?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
To have a motion for the prior year's invoices, the line was $145, and
Oh,
now it's $645 because they found another $500 that they owed somebody
Right.
from FY20.
Oh.
I'd make a motion to do that,
Okay, so
to approve
Evan made
that.
a motion, Chris seconded. All those in favor, Chris,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Heather,
Wrong
Srofa.
button.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay, Dave.
Aye.
That gave us time for Dave to show up. And I for myself. So, all right, so we've taken care of that change. So the other change has a cascading effect. Because you want to put free cash towards, more free cash towards the capital plan to free up budget funds for the increase in recycling. Is that correct? Okay.
So
I
that,
guess this is where it would be helpful to have the warrant articles. Yeah. Okay.
Do you want me to pull that up?
Can you work with the warrant articles instead, Heather, or do you prefer to work from this sheet?
no, did you want to see the original funding sources? Is that what you're looking for? Because I can reference those.
You just want to revisit the capital plan and the
fund,
the
yeah.
omnibus, right, Terry? Is that what you're saying?
We're just talking two articles that have to change. Is that correct?
Correct.
Ombudsman's, the omnibus budget and the capital plan.
Capital plan is Article 5.
And this is all just related to source of funding, except that there is an increase in the budget for the recycling.
The revised funding sources for Article 5 would be $682,502.42, $804,041 for free cash, and the same amount for the unexpended capital, which was $111,282.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or discussion around that? Do I have a motion?
What is the motion?
Do I, I'm just,
Oh, what's
I'm just,
the motion?
I would move to re-recommend Article 5 based on the revised numbers presented by the town manager.
Second.
so, all right, so I have Peter made the motion, Evan seconded.
Can I just
All
ask
those
a
in-
question? Like,
Yes,
is this just gonna look differently on the screen on Saturday? Is that like, I don't even know, I don't understand what we're doing.
The moved article will reflect new numbers that we did not have when we voted on this a few weeks ago.
so the numbers, instead of it being, say, 500,000 from the budget raise and appropriate, it would be 400,000 from raise and appropriate, and the number from the free cash will go up by the 100,000.
So for the capital plan, it's within the town meeting booklet. There's the chart with the funding sources. There will be a handout as well as up on the screen of what the revised numbers are.
For the funding sources.
Just for the funding sources, the capital plan is exactly the same.
Okay, so the funding sources on the bottom will be different.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I guess, okay, so I realize that we just have this on the table, but I guess I should find out whether or not people are, well, no, we have to free up the money before we can do that. So I guess my question would be, so the motion is on there to recommend to continue to recommend approval on Article 5. And so basically, I guess I'll go for the ayes and nays unless there's any more questions. Chris Menard? I'll come back
I
to
guess I
you.
do have a question. Is it,
Okay,
so is it just what's on page 10 of the warrant article and the spreadsheet will just look differently?
Yeah, the funding part will be different numbers, Chris.
Funding source.
Right.
The sources,
These numbers are different.
yeah, at the
Those
bottom of the
numbers-
page.
yeah, the capital planning projects are exactly the same. The funding sources on the bottom are gonna be different. But the total figure will be exactly the same.
Correct.
No, but why can't we look at what it would look like?
Let me see if I can.
We have it right here.
If you take the sheet that we just looked at, the dashboard that we just looked at, and you plug in those numbers into this spreadsheet, that's what you're gonna have.
All right, I'm fine. Aye.
It was a reasonable question.
I just don't like voting on something I don't see, but
It's completely understandable. Jay Simeon,
Aye.
Peter Beardmore,
Aye.
Heather Soroka,
Aye.
Evan Waters,
Aye.
Dave Passios,
Aye.
and I for myself. So you picked up a vote there.
that's why you don't let engineers on the finance committee.
No, that's why you do. You want to make sure you got all this stuff down.
Absolutely.
God, I've lost my view.
All right, so now do we need to look at the omnibus too, or not?
Yes.
What's that, 6?
So that's changing line 73 in the booklet will be.
Which page?
That is page 27 in the booklet. And that will change the solid waste recycling number from the, sorry, to 49,534 to 354,634. And it will change the total of the whole omnibus budget to 39,864,898.81.
Questions?
How much is it changing it?
The total change to that line is $105,100. So if you,
And that's just for the recycling?
yes,
Okay, do I have a motion? Or questions or discussion?
So how are you estimating the change? Is that just based on your current state of the negotiations, or
the bid we received, yes,
did we
How
only
many
receive
bids?
one bid?
one bid.
Out of curiosity, is this something that's worth, I mean, obviously we got to have trash removal come July 1st, so it kind of is what it is, but what's the term of the contract that you're negotiating? Or do you have a
3-year,
I'm sorry?
a 3-year.
And you said on Tuesday that that's going to line up with the bag contract. Is that true?
Yes, yeah. That we'd coincide the two because it made natural sense to have the bag contract coincide with the trash vendor
Are
contract.
those actually two separate contracts?
Yes. Mhm.
Just the people who make the bags,
Correct.
the ones that rip and tear and.
These ones seem bigger a little bit.
What was the option for a 1-year contract?
That wasn't a proposal.
That probably wasn't part of the scope.
I thought we asked for that.
We had one bid, and we got one bid.
Well, maybe we should rebid it.
There's not sufficient time to rebid and get a contractor in place before July.
It's really the
Oh.
nature of the industry that's driving
Yeah.
this. This is not
Oh,
unusual
I-
in other towns.
Mhm.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, but the way they pay for it in other towns is,
The recycling?
well, the way they do trash. Yeah, the way they pay for it.
Trash is self-sufficient. It's the recycling that's driving everybody's costs up for removal. and-
Yeah, but it goes hand in hand. That's a lot of money for recycling.
Well, hopefully
The-
people have learned a lot about what really goes in the recycle bin. So maybe, in 3
Is the
years. we'll be
recycling-
revisiting.
Is the recycling portion of the contract at all contributed to by the enterprise fund, or are they completely separate?
Separate.
They're separate. Any other questions, or can we proceed?
I would make a motion that we vote to re-recommend Article 6 as outlined by the town manager's revisions.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Dave seconded. All those in favor? Dave Passios,
aye.
Peter Beardmore,
Aye.
Chris Menard,
Aye.
Jay Simeoni,
Aye.
Evan Waters,
Aye.
Heather Soroka,
Aye.
and I for myself. Okay, so the only other one that you wanted to bring up was, as I understand it, there's only one of the 3 agreements that have been negotiated.
Yes. So Article 17, the DPW.
And I don't know if people had a chance to look at the information that Heather sent out today. And again, I do appreciate the comparisons with other towns. I think that just helps me.
So does that have any material bearing on the omnibus, Heather?
It's a transfer from the salary reserve, so it'll be within what we already have in the budget.
So is that something you're gonna work out on the worksheet, or is that something that we're gonna do a transfer on later?
It will happen under Article 17. The transfer will happen. So the omnibus budget will be voted under Article 6. Then when we get to 17, we're going to be essentially transferring that money from the salary reserve line to cover the cost of the first year contract.
And what will that transfer be?
$32,697.42.
Sorry, I had my mic off. That's a 2-year contract?
3-year. This is
3 year.
the one that was up on their natural progression.
Okay.
The clerical and the fire will be 2-year agreements when we get to that point. And those articles will be tabled or passed over. Sorry.
We
So
deferred.
I would like to say a few words. I know I passed along some information on it. I know that you've heard me say, and I'm sure select board members say at different meetings, how we've had trouble filling vacancies within that department. It's been a constant theme. Just looking back for the last 4 years, we've always had at least one vacancy. There was a year we had 3 vacancies for more than a year. So going into negotiations for this agreement, we knew we had to look at that, correcting that pattern through a wage adjustment. And so by gathering all that data from the other towns, which we normally do when we look at contracts, it clearly indicated we were well below the median value, which is where we want to end up, is right in the middle. So this contract was to rectify that over the 3 years, particularly the heavy equipment operator position. That if you look at the data, that one is really out of whack with our surrounding communities.
Chris said he'd do that if you let him play with the machines.
You have your CDL, Chris?
I could print one out.
Needs a hoisting license.
Heather, what is the current situation with our vacancies relative to existing approved positions?
So we have one remaining vacancy, a heavy equipment operator position. The problem has been that even when we've hired people, that we've had to hire them above step 1 in order to get them in the door. And in some cases, give them the grace period to get their license.
It seems like, though, it feels like we're doing better with respect to vacancies over the last year than we were doing in the previous year, though. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, we have one at this point compared to probably 3 at last year point. But like I said, going back 4 years, we have always had vacancies. So it's been a pattern. And when we have hired people, wages definitely were well under what the people that we've been interviewing can get somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I understand the financial aspects of this, and I think you guys have taken the right track here. What I'm hinting at here is I think that this is more than a financial issue. And I think that we're taking steps in the right direction to make ourselves a more attractive employer in the DPW.
Okay, so with that, do people want to take action tonight? Do you want to wait till Saturday?
I wouldn't mind taking action tonight. I do have a question on the comparison data. You have a column that is the fiscal 21 Lunenburg.
That's the rates.
Right, got it. But there's various steps, like, so for the heavy equipment, it says 2370.
Yeah, so the top number is the minimum, so step one, and the bottom number for each one is the maximum. So it's the range.
Oh, okay.
You have to, yeah, if you follow it across. So it's the
Okay.
top. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the step 1 and step 10 or whatever.
Depending on the grade, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So the heavy operator, the top step there, that 2370 in fiscal year 22 would actually be 2616.
I'm only seeing part of the thing. So say that again for which one?
So like the heavy operator, step 10 is 2616. So where it says 2370 for fiscal year
So-
22, it will be,
So Lunenburg's rate right now is $18.97 for the minimum, $23.70 at the top step.
right, but then the other document you sent us shows that it is $20.94, step 1, and 2616, step 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the plan is to do wage adjustments. The first year will be wage adjustments for all the different grades, but with a heavy emphasis on the heavy equipment operator. So if you look at the grades 12, 14, and 16, they would drop the first 2 steps in year 1. And grade 15 would drop the first 3 steps. And for the heavy equipment operator position, grade 13, that would drop the first 4 steps. And for the heavy equipment operator, the goal was over the 3-year period, just we couldn't do it, make that wage adjustment all in 1 year. It wasn't financially feasible. So to do it over the 3 years. So the second year of the contract, it would drop, for the heavy equipment operator only, would drop 3 steps. And then in the third year of the contract, it would drop 2 steps. So it's for just that position.
And then on the comparison data, are they similarly benefited across all of those towns?
As far as
Medical, dental, yeah,
that's not, we did not look at that.
okay, but it's probably safe to assume that they're
Yeah.
similar? Okay, thank you.
Is there a, I mean, obviously we know that this is going to have an effect of, what did you say the difference was, $32,000 or somewhere in that vicinity?
Yes.
Are we looking at, as a result of this, substantially more in the out years as a result of this in year 2 and 3?
The out years are very similar to the first year. So the second year was roughly, I think it was 35,000. Let me pull that up.
Sorry, we don't have background music.
Or like Jeopardy music.
Yeah, I could hum if you want.
No, thank you, no.
All right.
Sorry.
If you put on background music, they can't post it to
Were
you.
these,
That's true, they can't. I forget what we're looking for now.
Okay,
these
so
all,
fiscal 23, a little more than this fiscal 22 was 38,494. Fiscal 24 was 36,697. So over the 3 years, the aggregate cost was 107,889.
Do you have
What's that
a,
in percentages? Do you happen to have that?
So I'm just doing rough math, looking at your DPW costs, but you're looking at just salary moving your DPW budget by a little bit in excess of 2%.
per
If you
year?
take the whole DPW budget,
If you take the whole DPW budget and overlay those salaries, you're just going to have an increase of a little over 2% just to cover the salaries.
that sounds fair.
how many positions are we talking?
10 positions.
Tim, okay, so, all right.
And that's before we add 50,000 to pave roads and stuff like that.
Right.
Were there any other questions related to that?
what is the pump station technician? Isn't that the sewer department?
That is not a filled position. That's just on the grid. So there are some
Okay.
positions on there that we have no employees for. So there used to be a pump station technician before they went to a
Of
third party.
course, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none. If you're prepared to take action, I'm prepared to take a motion. And this motion would be to recommend approval on Article 17 related to the DPW contract.
I move to recommend approval as outlined by the town manager and the new pending contract as negotiated by the town manager and approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Second,
Okay, so I have Peter making the motion, Chris seconding. All those in favor, Chris,
aye.
Jay,
Aye,
Peter,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Dave,
I,
Heather,
Aye.
and I for myself. See how optimistic I am? I only asked for the ayes. I should have, watching Peter when he filled in for me, I was like, oh yeah, I should ask for the nays too, but I never do. All right, so that takes us through all of the warrant changes.
Yes, so 18 and 19 will be passed over, so they'll be included in the consent calendar as well.
Okay,
Jerry, could I ask a question of the town manager so I don't feel compelled to pull one of the articles off the consent calendar on town meeting floor?
that would be awesome.
Yeah, if I can get it answered tonight, I won't.
Okay,
Regards to the rescinding of the dollar amount for the feasibility study, can you tell me what was originally appropriated for that? Because we're rescinding the unused balance, correct?
Yes, so Karen's on the line. She just unmuted.
What article are we talking about?
That's 23. Are you talking about Dave?
Well, there's actually two of them in a row there that are just rescinding authorizations, and I would like to know what the original authorization was, and then it tells you the difference between what was authorized and what was actually spent.
So Dave, I can tell you that the original, the feasibility study, the cost of the feasibility study was that $750,000, but it was included in both the amount that was authorized for the feasibility study originally and in the authorization for the school project in full. So that $750,000 is what got voted, and that's the amount that we're rescinding. But the feasibility study costs we're also in the second article where we're rescinding the $4.8 million. So the full authorization for the school project, and including the feasibility study portion, was $72 million and some change. And we're rescinding, out of that $72 million authorization, 4.8 million, and we're rescinding the one that you're talking about right now in full because it was accounted for twice.
Okay. Was it done intentionally for potential reasons that were not known at the time, or was it just?
No, I honestly don't think so. I think it's the way that it's all handled through the MSBA, where they consider the feasibility study portion of the project part of the MSBA project that we're requesting reimbursement on. So I don't think it was an intentional thing, and I don't even think that at the time that that $72 million got voted, that we were aware of the fact that the feasibility study was included in that number. But either way, we did not issue any portion of the $750,000 from the original authorization for the feasibility study, and we also underspent the full appropriation that included the feasibility study by that $4.8 million figure.
So you'd have to go deeper into the accounting on the overall spending for the construction of the school under that MSBA program to actually find out what was spent as feasibility. Is that correct? Or can we assume the 750 was spent? I'm not going to ask to drill down to it now. I'm just trying.
I mean, I can definitely look into it further and see if I can find that number, but I would venture to guess that the majority of that $750,000 was expended for the feasibility portion of that project.
Okay, thank you very much. That answers it for me.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? All right, evidently I have Alexa on my computer and she's listening. All right, so we'll move down the road. Do we have any minutes for this evening? And if we
I
don't,
thought I saw a couple in the minutes.
okay.
Hold on.
Has anybody had a chance to review the minutes in the folder?
I did
Okay,
not.
I have not.
Okay. Then we'll take a look at that
Okay.
in May.
On 13th.
Yeah, on May 13th, yeah, when we get together, we'll, and then, committee and department reports, do we have any?
Yeah, the school committee met last night. The big presentation of the evening was the superintendent providing an update on progress made around strategic planning and execution on the strategic plan, largely affected by mitigations and changes of course, obviously, that occurred over the course of the last year as a result of the pandemic. But generally speaking, it sounds like progress continues, which is encouraging. The one item that I think is probably most pertinent to the discussions that we've had recently is Mr. Londa came and made a presentation to report on a quote that he has received from an organization that is on the state contract and is approved and authorized to do work on the fire alarm system at the primary school. And I believe and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I believe the number came in at roughly $72,000, which is obviously substantially less than the number that was brought to the capital planning committee a number of months ago. The other thing that the school committee is needing to consider is part of this is that there is $25,000 in earmarked money that is available in the current fiscal year, which they believe will not be available following the end of the fiscal year, beyond June. So as a follow-up, they didn't take any action on it. But following the meeting, I called Mr. Cassidy this morning to try to get a sense of the direction that he thought things would be going. If he thought that this would be something that would be a capital planning item for next year, and we would have to forego the $25,000 or ask for it again from the legislature or what have you. And he seemed pretty confident that there was going to be end of year money, unspent money in the school department that they could transfer to fund the project and still take advantage of that $25,000 earmark this year. So the good news is it doesn't look like this is something that is going to need to be re-raised either on town meeting floor or part of a subsequent action by the capital planning committee, but is probably something that will be able to be dealt with in-house by the school department.
Sounds good.
Dave, you up for a committee report?
Yeah, a very brief one, if I can keep my voice working. Let's see, Parks met last evening and had some very good discussions about Marshall Park and a review of the Earth Day week projects that were accomplished by a number of groups. And I guess that's gone really well, and there will still be a couple of projects this coming weekend. And we started discussions as to what we needed to really get going on as we get into next month and definitely June, in anticipation of the money being approved for the Marshall Park master planning assistance. So that was our meeting for the night, for the night. A little bit of discussion around Town Beach policies for rental, and a little bit of brief discuss. Oh, I neglected to mention one thing, and that is that we voted to recommend hiring, and I forget how many in total there were people that we recommended, but we recommended the first round of hiring for the seasonal workers to run the Town Beach this summer. There are still going to be a need for 2 or possibly 3 more lifeguards. And there is a lifeguard training coming up in the near future at Orchard Hills, I believe. And so there are 2 or 3 positions still available. The intent is that those interviews will be of people that have successfully completed the lifeguard program. That's it on Parks. TC Passios has been hours of discussion about the last couple of meetings that we've had, so I don't think I'll try to hash over it again. I am disappointed that the dollar amount came out as late as it did. I would have preferred, as late as it came out, that it waited until town meeting 4, but it is what it is. And that's about it. Capital planning. Oh, I wanted to mention that I will bring a document to this committee whenever we decide to put it back on the agenda for the change in the trigger numbers for capital projects. It's a pretty simple, we're changing the number in 4 spots in 2 paragraphs. But I will create a document that redlines those numbers and the verbiage around it and distribute that to this committee before we vote on it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any department or committee reports? Seeing none, then I guess we'll move to town manager or finance director reports. Do we have any? Karen, you're lit up.
I am? I don't know why.
Maybe you have something to say. I don't know.
No, I don't. I'm fine.
All right.
I'll say I'll see you Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
I-
Anytime.
Yeah, I just have one thing that I mentioned in my town manager's report on Tuesday to the board of selectmen, select board, hard habit to rank, was about the Flat Hill Road culvert project. The engineer the project is fully designed. We did learn that the small bridge program grant applications will not be opening up that. As we had anticipated along that we'd submit an application, which they had prepared as soon as that program was available to accept applications, and they will not be doing so until late in fiscal 22. So we're going to proceed due to the priority nature of that repair, proceed with putting it out to bid as soon as possible so we can get a contractor in place by July. And they'll have to start the fabrication for the culvert so we can get that project wrapped up as soon as possible.
Heather, how did we fund that? We have it funded already, don't we? And we were hoping the bridge project would,
That's in the
Reimburse.
capital plan.
okay.
I thought that was just
Oh, that-
design. That's implementation as well?
That's construction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with the design was last year's, this current year's capital.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I'm a little
No.
fuzzy these days.
Not a problem.
Any word on Pleasant Street, Heather?
The bridge, yes, is, they're putting up the signage in place and everything. The bridge will be closed by June 1st. That's the expected timeline for the closure of that bridge. That project should be complete by mid-August.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
They obviously are going to work a little bit faster than the state workers are on Mass Ave. I was expecting the one-way traffic stuff to begin at the beginning of the project, and there's like nothing going on down there. It's
And the Complete Streets project, that's about to go too. That should be the end of May and be done by July 1st. So, and it really is much shorter than that. So it's really a 2-week project for all that to occur along Memorial, Main Street, and the Oak Ave
they're
intersection.
going to do the intersection in that amount of time?
So they say.
Are
We're
they going to
gonna
wait?
start a
Is
pool.
that going to be done before school gets out?
They're waiting that piece. They're going to wait till school's out. So that's going to be the last portion. They didn't want to interfere with bus transportation and everything.
Okay.
Heather, are there
Public
any
comment?
changes related to the COVID restriction reductions that are coming tomorrow or Saturday?
No, I haven't seen the reductions as far as public spaces. The mask order is being loosened for outdoor mask wearing, if you can socially distance. There's different parameters. I can't recall them off the top of my head, but it's like May 22nd was another benchmark date for different industries reopening to different capacities. We are reopening Town Hall in Ritter Tuesday. So the doors will be open all day during business hours starting Tuesday.
Is there a plan to return to live meetings or hybrid meetings or something?
The public access has worked out, and they have to just revisit that. They had done that over a month ago now about how to do hybrid meetings to test that out. So they're in the process of making sure that's retested out. So when we're ready to go, we're still limited to the 11-person capacity in the town hall meeting room with masks and socially distance. So if we can meet those requirements, then we can hold those types of meetings there.
Well, we should be able to fit. Okay, so with that, do we have any public comment from the board?
No,
I think I'm sorry, Karen, did you raise your hand?
I think we may have a,
Yeah, we do. I just noticed that Karen had raised her hand and I wasn't sure if she meant to. Okay, so we do have a public comment from the public. So go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. The question I have has probably been addressed, but I don't remember it. Is the ACE program that we're talking about that's currently in the Passio School, is that a state mandated program? And are there any alternatives that could be worked out to place that program someplace other than the Passio School? I say that because it seems to me that we're trying to do an awful lot with a limited amount of space, and there's a direct cost to that. So I'm just looking for alternatives, and I offer that as a question now rather than a town meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think basically the ACE program is part of the school program. It is a required program. It is not required to be located where it is. I don't know how difficult it would be to relocate it, but basically, one of the nice things about having it there is that you're talking about students who are now transitioning to adulthood, and I don't know the nature of the students there, but it certainly gives them an opportunity for potential social interactions with people who are older. So, but it's not required to be there.
I think the news item here is, I believe Mr. Rogers intimated that he will be present at town meeting.
Yes, he did.
Which,
Well, he will either be present at town meeting or he won't, and that's why he raised it here. So,
well, his absence at the last couple-ish were duly noted. So
He's present even when he's not there.
this is true. Any other public comments from anybody in the public?
Harry, I'd like to make a public comment as a member of the public, not as a member of this committee.
Okay,
Dave
but no
Passio-
info. Okay.
Yep, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street, so you know where I live. I am a resident of Lunenburg. And I've brought these things up occasionally as they happen over the last few years. And it really saddens me when another member of my village passes. A very wonderful man, another one of the parents that helped raise me and my generation, just passed away in the last 2 to 3 days, Mr. Dwight Wentworth. I grew up with all his boys and his daughter, and very sad that, I mean, he had a wonderful life, but it's always sad when a member of my village passes. I believe he was 93 years old. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no other public comment, then basically we will see you all Saturday morning. What time does the meeting start? 8:30?
9 a.m.
Nine.
Check-in starts at 8.
Okay. All right, so
Everyone will show up at 9:30.
no, I'll be there on time, I promise, because I'm hoping that it ends early. All right, and then we will have a meeting on Thursday, the 13th. So I'm assuming that part of the agenda will be to revisit the procedures discussion. We'll probably wrap up a little bit about town meeting, and then also throw in there the capital planning policy change, just for fun. If there's anything else that anybody comes up with, please let me know. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, so Dave made the motion, Peter seconded. All those in favor, Chris,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
and I for myself, thank you very much.
Everybody.
Good night,
Saturday.
Good night.
Yep, see you Saturday.